All right, our last two practice problems here. Again, recognize perfect square, and subtraction. So this fits the bill, and we're ready to jump in. You take the square root of both. So two binomials, not just one binomial. Some people get lazy here and they stop writing both binomials. It has to be both. So 4x. I like to write them sometimes simultaneously like this. And then one's plus, one's minus. It actually doesn't matter if you write the plus or the minus first. And then the square root of 121 is 11, like we did earlier. And our last practice problem here is when we take the square root, we end up with 7x minus 6. So you notice I wrote the minus first there, totally fine. And then 7x plus 6 as my second binomial. So it's really important, guys, that we recognize these patterns. If we don't recognize the pattern, we're really going to be in trouble, because coming later in this week, in this lesson, is all these different types of quadratics that we have to factor. So being able to recognize this one right away is super important. So again, I just have to say it one more time. If we recognize these patterns, if we see that it has just two terms, all right, just two terms, and those two terms are being subtracted, and that those two terms are perfect squares, boom, this fits the pattern. This is what we're going to go for. So what I want to show you is ones that would maybe dupe you, right? So you might go like, oh yeah, 4x squared plus 9. That's a no-go, because you're like, well, it's two terms with regard. Yeah, but and they're perfect squares. Yeah, but this is the problem right here, right? As long as one thing, it doesn't match the pattern, it doesn't work. Okay, so that's a no-go. Another example might be something like this. Say we had 9x to the third minus 16. Like, yeah, it's two terms, it's subtraction this time, but here's the problem. X cubed is not a perfect square. X cubed is not a perfect square. All right, let's try another. What if it was 100 x squared minus 25x? And so we're like, awesome, we have two terms. It's subtraction. That's a perfect square, perfect square, perfect square. X is not a perfect square. So if there's just one piece of this that is not meeting the criteria, if it doesn't fit the pattern, then this does not work, okay? So in this one, example, actually, this last one, this pink one, it's actually a really good example of something that's not a perfect square, not the difference of two squares, but it's actually just a GCF problem. So very often, if it's two terms and it doesn't have everything we're looking for, then it's probably going to be a GCF, right? So if you look at 100x squared minus 25x, they actually have 25 and x in common. So you could divide that out, right? You could divide the 25. Let me get rid of the sad face. We could divide the 25x out of our two terms, and we'd be left with 100 divided by 25 is 4, x squared divided by x is x, and we divide 25x by 25x, you could just get minus 1. So this would actually be the answer there. So don't get duped. Sometimes you will see problems that they try to trick you, make you think it's two perfect squares, but they're not. All right, folks, jump into your practice problems in the rest of the worksheet.